So this is not really a new finding in climate change, but it's very important. We hear a lot about Miyawaki method of creating forests, and we hear a lot about how important it is to grow more forests, and people keep saying we'll plant 1 trillion trees and solve the climate change problem and so on. And this discussion about whether trees and growing more forests is really a good way to mitigate climate change or not continues, because we also begin to have, we're also having lots of wildfires, and data says that wildfires are becoming more frequent, more intense, maybe area covered is larger now, and so on and so forth. So I thought I'll include this here just as a way of, providing information rather than a new finding in climate change. There are, this is not something new even in terms of a method, and this is not the authoritative site or anything, but I like the Sugi project, which is a NGO, a non-profit, which helps people grow forests. So this is providing a brief introduction to the Miyawaki method for creating forests. What is the Miyawaki forest technique? Sugi collaborates with a global network of forest makers to build biodiversity and regenerate urban areas by planting pocket forests using the acclaimed Miyawaki method. So you can think of them as a consulting company, or provides advice. It's non-profit, so it doesn't mean it's free, so it's doing something good. They work with the UN Decade of Science and so on and so forth. Miyawaki method of afforestation was developed by the Japanese botanist and plant ecology expert Professor Akira Miyawaki, and draws inspiration from nature's ecosystems to create 100% organic, dense and diverse pioneer forests in as little as 20 to 30 years. Miyawaki forests grow 10 times faster, are 30 times denser, and contain 100 times more biodiversity. Since they are quick to establish, maintenance free after first 2 to 3 years, and can be created on sites as small as 3 square meters. Just 3 square meter, Miyawaki forests are viable solutions for cities looking to rapidly build climate resilience. It's a long way to go from having urban forests to climate resilience, because all the buildings and infrastructure have to be resilient as well, but nonetheless these are obviously contributors to the overall resilience. And here is a nice schematic of the people planting, and you can see that it's a very small dense region that's being forested here. But what makes Miyawaki forest unique? The Miyawaki method mimics the way a forest would recolonize itself if humans stepped away. Only native species that would occur naturally in that area without humans, given the specific climate condition, are planted. Often this is referred to as LEK, local environmental knowledge, so that you bring native vegetation. But of course, with climate change and invasive species and ecosystems splitting apart and species moving, you don't know what is so native anymore, because there's always a time scale involved in saying what is native. Indigenous plant species have spent thousands of years adapting to their local environment to create a supporting ecosystem, so planting them doesn't reinstate this biodiversity. It builds a site that's more responsive to climate change. So that's the main thing, that they can survive climate change, whether it's increased temperatures or reduced rainfall, increased rainfall, and humidity. The Miyawaki method isn't just unique because it restores native habitats using native trees. The afforestation principles are based on an understanding of how these species would interact in a natural forest. You plant a diverse mixture of trees close together to maximize density and create a balance. Nature doesn't thrive in grids of 1.5 meters. Seeds drop from trees randomly to simulate growth, or fallen trees open up clearing to the sun. As the closely planted saplings have to compete for light, which only shines on them from above, they shoot upwards very fast instead of sideways. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I have to take this. Okay, so my Water filter has broken down and the mechanic is coming to fix it, so he's gonna buzz me in a few minutes again. Sometimes less is more, but in this instance planting a huge variety of native trees close together means an increase in biodiversity. The denseness of growth provides a greater amount of forage for pollinators and refuge for birds. More canopy cover shades out weeds and creates a cool home for insects, plus the increased leaf litter builds fertility and life in the soil. Also, if you have a variety of tree species, you have others to step in if one succumbs to disease. So it's a kind of multi-dimensional approach. This is the lead Sugi forest maker James Godfrey Fawcett saying, within a forest, biodiversity means balance. Birds control pests, insects pollinate plants, and beneficial fungi keep the trees healthy. Every organism has a role to play, and all these roles interact. And if you build a healthy biodiverse habitat that can look after itself, it becomes self-sustaining. You can step away and let nature get to work. So Sugi follows these 4 stages when planting a Miyawaki forest. Again, it's a nice little schematic here. The first step, identifying potential natural vegetation. When planting a Miyawaki forest, the first step is to identify the native vegetation best suited to the area being planted, termed potential natural vegetation. To establish this, our forest makers do intensive research, often involving the indigenous community. They look to see what is growing locally in protected areas or ancient growth forests. So undisturbed forests give you a good sense of what is native. Forests are multi-layered, and as the Miyawaki method mirrors nature, we identify and plant 4 layers of vegetation, building a resilient green wall of canopy trees, subtrees, canopy trees, subtrees, and shrubs. We select up to 40 different species to create balance and maximize density. Secondly, preparing the soil. The second step when planting a Miyawaki forest is soil preparation. Since Sugi focuses on rewilding nature-deprived areas, the soil is often degraded, compacted, waterlogged, or bacteria-dominant. However, trees need fungi-dominant, soft and crumbly soil so their roots can establish faster and have better access to nutrients. Our forest makers work the soil once to restore the missing biology and put it on the path to becoming oxygenated, fertile, and self-sustaining. Compost tea is also added to the earth as it's turned. This contains strains of beneficial fungi known to interact with the specific tree species, and a stimulant such as molasses or liquid seaweed to give the fungi fuel to grow. Let me read one more maybe before the technician knocks. The third step is planting the saplings. Once the soil is prepared, Sugi pocket forests are planted with the help of community. We plant 3 to 4 saplings per square meter in a random manner that mirrors how natural forests grow. We choose to plant young saplings as they are more adaptable and can form symbiotic relationships with mycorrhizal fungi in the soil far quicker than an older tree. The denseness of a Miyawaki forest isn't just great for creating biodiversity, it also increases carbon capture, pollution filtration, and produces an area more resilient to flooding and landslides. Increased canopy cover reduces the amount of rainfall that hits the ground, increases shade, and promotes cooling. Not to mention the green wall effect of the multi-layered trees, which acts as a shield if there's ever a storm surge. So let me stop here because it's gonna get disrupted soon. Either I'll continue this, but this is already 8 minutes or so, so either I'll continue this or I'll start a new podcast to conclude this short report on Miyawaki forests. Okay, my water filter needs a new motherboard, so after 1 hour of tinkering, that's what the technician said, so he will be back, but in the meantime I will continue this podcast, resume it and complete it in one podcast, because we just have a couple of more points to make. The fourth step, remember we were looking at identifying potential natural vegetation, preparing the soil, planting the saplings, and now you need to mulch the forest. Once you have planted the saplings, the final step is to apply a compost tea and mulch heavily using straw. The mulch protects the soil and retains moisture. Species such as earthworms, beetles, and other insects feed from the top down, building soil fertility by pulling the mulch into the ground for it to be broken down by the microbes. As mulching helps, there's a big banging going on now, some construction. As mulching helps the soil retain moisture, you do not have to do as much watering. The more fertile the soil, the more water it holds. Miyawaki forests only need to be maintained for the first 2 to 3 years. After that, you can stop weeding and mulching and let the forest get on with it on its own. Where can you plant a Miyawaki forest? Miyawaki forests do not require a huge amount of space. You can plant them almost anywhere in sites as small as 3 square meters, as we said. Even at this size, they fast become a habitat for countless species and offer multiple ecosystem services all at once. These pocket forests are perfect for the fast regeneration of urban areas, and Sugi's forest makers have transformed school playgrounds, city parks, and urban rivers from gray to green. By the way, Sugi, here it's written as SUG, capital with a small I, but Sugi is a word which refers to a tall evergreen tree that grows in China and Japan. So obviously the name is derived from there. We need the forest around us wherever we are, and instead of going out into the wilderness, the Miyawaki method brings the wild to you. Sugi pocket forests can be created at the front door of a community, and the social benefits of this too, mental and physical health, are as important as the ecological and environmental benefits. The Miyawaki method is community-based and people-centered and can be used to reclaim and reimagine public space for the benefit of people and the planet. For Sugi founder Els van Middelem, so that's the founder of this particular non-profit, it's all about creating pockets of hope, not just Miyawaki pocket forests, but pockets of host. Why do Sugi plant pocket forests using Miyawaki method? So I won't go into details because it's a bit of a sales pitch. Forest of Thanks, one of 4 Sugi forestry projects with Barking and Dagenham Council in London. Sugi aims to restore ecosystems and build biodiversity. The Miyawaki method enables us to do precisely that, creating a flourishing forest habitat that provides a range of social, environmental, and ecological benefits beyond just capturing carbon. Miyawaki forests purify the air, manage water, regulate the climate, create oxygen, build soil and biodiversity, and provide food, medicine, shelter, and joy to all those connected to it, or even those tourists that come by in an urban area and see a Sugi forest, for example. Forests always light up people's faces, and it has a lot of well-being impact. So well-being is different than health, where well-being is a mental condition which makes you more productive, happier, better relations, and all those co-benefits. So let's leave this here. It's nice little information podcast that I just put in here because it just happened to be coming up in another podcast I was doing, and I decided I should put out something on Miyawaki method of creating forests. Okay.